I'm holding the first 29er frame that I have owned in 2.5 years, and I am switching to this as my cross-country bike. Now right behind me is the bike that I proclaimed as the best cross-country bike I've ever ridden, the Giant Anthem 27.5 with Stan's Valor carbon wheels. Now why would I switch out a frame, a bike, for one that I absolutely loved? Well, this is America and I can. No, but seriously, when I test rode this Niner RKT9 RDO, it was the first 29er that was agile enough for me to use as my cross-country bike. And I did some lap times and all that. You can see that video. And this bike, the Niner RKT9 that I test rode, the lap times were about identical with the Anthem. But the question that was in the back of my mind is, well, what if I spent enough time on this 29er to really get used to the way it handled? Because I've been on 27.5, both trail and cross-country, for 2.5 years, and I've gotten really accustomed to the way that bike rode. So if I can really get used to the way this handled, because in the video that I made, I said that in the corners I felt like this bike had more traction than I really allowed it to. I didn't really feel like I hit the limits of it. So I'm going to take a huge chance, because I'm not going to have two cross-country bikes. So one of them's got to go. Before I sell my Anthem, I'm going to get this bike built up. I'm going to test ride it for a couple weeks and kind of switch back and forth with the Anthem, just to make sure that I like this bike as much or maybe better than the Anthem. I don't know. But I'm going to put, this is the 4-star build, and I'll show this when I get it built up. But I'm going to put the Stan's Valor wheels because I love those wheels, and I don't want to go away from those. Even though the new 4-star build on these comes with Niner's own carbon wheels with the Stan's bead socket technology and DT Swiss 350 hubs. A really sweet wheel set. But I don't want to take too much of a chance and make too drastic of a change. So I want to stick with the Valor wheels, and I'll sell off those wheels. So here we go. I'm going to take my time building this thing up. It's completely frame only right now. This is the way they come from Niner. So I'm going to build it up. I'll show the bike, and then I'll talk a little bit about the comparison between the two. Won't go too heavily into it, and then I'll do some reviews and make another video that really talks about how these bikes compare. So here we go. Of course, you have to weigh the frame before you build it up. So this frame is a medium, and with the shock and the Boost 148 axle and the seat post collar, comes in at 4.94 pounds. So that is a very, very respectable weight for a full suspension 29er frame. I've got the bike built up. Here it is. This bike, let me first of all go over the only mods that I made on this bike. So this is the 4-star build, which is XT, and I have done a video showing Niner's 2017 bike lineup, which talks about the changes in the build kit. So they just within the last couple weeks changed their build kit. So this is the new 4-star with Shimano XT M8000, and it comes with carbon rims, carbon wheels, and I will show those wheels in a minute, but I changed those out for the Valors. So the only mods that I've made from the 4-star build is, instead of the Maxxis Icon tires, I put on my very familiar Schwalbe Rocket Ron tires, and I put on a 29 by 2.25 in front and the rear, and I went with the Stan's Valor wheels. Wheels and tires make the biggest difference in ride quality, and since I'm making a gamble by switching from 27.5 back to a 29, I didn't want to go too far away from what I'm familiar with, and I absolutely love the Valor wheels and the Schwalbe tires. The thing I like about the Schwalbe tires, and this isn't a tire review, but when I go into a corner, there's often times when you kind of slip a little bit or slip out, and these just grab really well. They have really good transition knobs and really good shoulder knobs, and so they're fairly low rolling resistant. So, you know, and the Maxxis Icons are good. I may actually hold on to the stock wheels and tires as a backup wheel set, or a wheel set that I use when I go up into the mountains just to ride. So this will be my race wheel set when I do mountain bike races and just riding around my local trails. I've also changed out the handlebar This is the bar that was on my Anthem 27.5. I like a riser bar. I like the feel, the bend that you get. So I inverted the stem, so instead of the stem having a little bit of a rise, it's pretty much flat, and that will give me a low enough position with the riser bar. So I just put the flat bar on my Anthem when I sell it, so it'll have the flat bar. And I put on my ESI foam grips. It also comes with some pretty nice grips, and I'll show the bar and the grips that come on the 4-star build up close. I already put them on my Anthem to get it ready to sell. So the bike built up to be just a hair, like an ounce or maybe less than that, under 23 pounds with pedals. So this is a light bike. Oh, the other mod, which really lightened up the bike, I almost forgot. I did put on an Ultegra cassette. So this is an 1132 Ultegra cassette, which is all I need around my local trails. I don't have any steep sustained climbs. So it comes with the Shimano XT 1146, which is a massive cassette. It's funny to me that I can get away with a 32 and cassettes keep getting bigger and bigger. Now I will obviously use that other cassette when I go up into the mountains to ride, but for local, I lighten the bike by about half a pound. So if I were to use the stock wheels and stock cassette, the M8000 cassette, it'd probably add about a pound. So it'd probably be just under 24 pounds with the typical 4-star build. Again, that's with XT pedals. So let me mention the cable routing on this bike. I owned a Jet 9 RDO years ago. That's the one I used in my bike cleaning video, the orange and black one. And the cable routing on that bike was an absolute nightmare. The cables went in through the head tube, and to change the cables you had to drop the fork, take out the cranks, undo the shock mount. It was awful. So Niner has dramatically improved their cable routing. It is so easy. It's got these slots and you put in these rubber plugs. I will say, if you ever build up one of these, the slots up here are thinner than this one. And I spent, no joke, like 25 minutes trying to get one of the rubber plugs in, and then I realized it was for the one down here, which is a fatter slot. So if you ever build one of those up, remember that, because it'll save you a lot of time and sweat and frustration. So the cable routing, like this is the shock. So this cable comes in through here from the Fox remote lock or remote shock control, and comes out here and goes right to the shock. The rear derailleur, the rear shifter cable comes in here, pops out here, pretty straight line all the way back to the derailleur. So again, so much easier. It's full cable housing, and the Jet 9 RDO was not full cable housing, which is why it was so difficult, because the cable's in here, and then it went down through the frame, and then it started with the housing again, kind of somewhere down here. So again, kudos to Niner for making their bike so much easier to work on. I can change out a derailleur cable in 5 minutes on this bike if I had to. While I'm speaking of that, I am getting a little bit of friction, and it may be the Jaguar cables, I don't know, but both the rear shock and the rear derailleur, I don't like the amount of effort it's taking right now. Hopefully it'll break in. If not, I may change out these housings for like a Shimano. I mean, this is a good housing, but I'm getting a little bit too much friction. But and this is the rear brake. Let me show. Just runs outside, so it's not internal. It's got a really nice retention clip here, and so again, just really easy cable routing on this bike. So I mentioned that the rear shock does have a remote lockout. That is something that I'm still not sure about. If I could have had the option, I would have just gone with the regular Fox DPS shock without the remote. I typically just set mine on my Anthem right in the middle and left it there. If I needed to lock it out on pavement, I would just reach down and do that. So I'm still up in the air about whether or not I'm going to like this. I have not ridden this bike yet, other than just riding it around the neighborhood. Tomorrow morning I have a cyclocross race, and then it's at a place called Santos, which has probably one of the best trail systems in the southeast. And I'm gonna, after my cyclocross race, hop on this bike and go out on the trails and ride it for the maiden voyage. So I'll definitely follow up this first look with a review, and I'll talk about the rear shock. But the way this works is that is going to be all the way open, and then one click down is in the middle position, and then one more click is in the really firm position. So what happens is when I release this, it doesn't release this all the way. So you see it hasn't moved even though it's fully released. If I tap it a little bit, it'll come on over. That's because of that friction inside the cable housing, which again I hope will loosen up. Now what I did notice is when I'm riding, if I release it all the way, just a few bumps will kind of jiggle it enough to release. So, you know, in an era where we're getting rid of front derailleurs to, you know, reduce the amount of controls on the bar and reduce weight, reduce complexity, I'm not sure that adding a remote lockout shock on a bike is something that I would choose. But hey, you know, maybe 3 weeks down the road I'll just love it and use it all the time. So time will tell. I'll mention that the finish on this bike is just immaculate. This is a good looking bike. Niner, it's such a clean and tidy bike. The carbon is really smooth. The bearing bolts and everything are just really polished. So you know, Niner has done an awesome job on this bike. Let me show some of the component highlights as I wrap up this video. So it comes with a Fox step cast fork, and when I saw that on the build kit, I knew this is the build kit that I wanted. This is a light fork, and I'm doing a separate review on this fork, so I won't go too much into it, but this fork is lightened up about ½ a pound from the regular chassis Fox cross-country fork. So it's a 32mm stanchion fork, but it's trimmed down, narrowed, and this bike does come with a 110 spacing. So as you know, my Anthem was a 100mm axle. This is a 110 in the front and the Boost 148 in the back. So this is my first bike that I've owned with a 110 front and a 148 back. So you know, when I test rode it, I didn't notice that much more of a stiffness, but what it does is it allows the frame makers to really shorten the chainstays. So this bike has a shorter chainstays, which makes it really agile, and I'll comment on that when I give my more long-term review on this bike. So that's the axle for the front and the rear. It comes with Shimano brakes, so you've got the Shimano XT M8000 brakes. Love XT brakes. I've said so many good things about these brakes. You know, I had to bleed these brakes when I built the bike, and they're just so easy to bleed, so easy to work on, and they work very, very well. The shifter on this bike is mounted on the same bracket as the brake, which is nice and tidy. So you've only got one clamp here on the handlebar, and it does have a Shimano XT Shadow Plus rear derailleur. So you release that there to release the tension to take the wheel out. It does come with a race face crank. So this is a crank set that I'm somewhat familiar with. I had a race face on my previous Anthem, and I really like it. It's got the race face narrow wide. This is a 32 tooth front chain ring. I had a 34 on my Anthem, but that was a 27.5. So with the 29er, you've got a taller gear range. So I'm going to have about the same gear range that I had on my Anthem 27.5. And this, by the way, is a race face turbine crank. And I believe I had the Atlas on my previous Anthem. Not the Anthem that I'm getting ready to sell, but the one before that. And so the Atlas was a little bit heavier, more of a trail type crankset. This is more of a cross-country crankset, and you can see in the back it's got these cutouts to reduce the weight but keep the strength and stiffness. So it comes with a press fit 30 bottom bracket. This bottom bracket was really easy to press in. So you've got a 30mm spindle in the crankset, which makes for a really stiff crankset when you're cranking hard. This is the wheel set that comes with the new 4-star Niner build. This is Niner's own carbon rim, but it uses the Stan's bead socket technology, which allows the tire to really lock in to that bead when you're airing up as tubeless. They include rim tape, they include a valve stem, they even include a small bottle of Stan's fluid for each wheel. They do not include tubes, so this bike is made to go tubeless. But you do have to take out this white rim strip and put on the tape. And they come with a DT Swiss 350 hub. So again, this is the stock wheel set that comes with the 4-star Niner builds now. The 4-star build also now comes with Maxxis Icon tires. It comes with a 2.35 for the front and a 2.2 for the back, and they are tubeless ready. I've used, in fact I still use, Maxxis tubeless tires on my cyclocross bike, and the tubeless ready tires work very, very well. And this is the handlebar that you get with the 4-star build. It's a Niner RDO flat bar, and the grips are really nice. I'm just used to the ESI foams, but these have kind of a built-in end cap on these, which is pretty cool. And so it's a lock-on grip, kind of a thinner design, but a really nice grip. I use a mirror on the left side of my bike, so these grips also wouldn't work because of that, because I like putting in a mirror. But again, it's a nice grip set that comes with the Niner builds now. And this bike does come with the Niner RDO seat post. So this is a carbon seat post with a little bit of flex. So not only do you have 90 millimeters of travel in the rear, and by the way 100 up front, but you also have a seat post that has a little bit of flex to it. So this should be a pretty comfortable bike to ride. I'm really looking forward to getting out and just hammering this bike and seeing what it does. And this saddle, I really like these Niner saddles. I have one of these on my RLT9 steel, and I put in a gravel Century on that saddle and did fine. So really comfortable saddle, got a nice anatomical cutout. So that's going to wrap it up for this first look of the Niner RKT9 RDO. And I will mention that this is a medium. I am 5'8" and a half, and so this, just riding around the parking lot feels perfect. So if you're thinking about sizing, kind of use that as a reference. So again, I will report back in a few weeks after I get some miles on this bike. Cyclocross season starts tomorrow for me, so I won't be doing a ton of mountain biking over the next 3 or 4 weeks, but the new bike, you got to get out and ride as much as you can. So I will report back and give you an update. Thanks for watching.